bathroom. And we're going to do a remodel this week. It's my week off between Christmas and New Year's. I'm doing something for myself, which is remodeling the bathroom, changing the tub out, doing a new floor. It's actually kind of a minor remodel because I just did a new sink and the toilet's in fine shape. When everything's out, I can repaint and I don't have to worry because I'm redoing the floor about the paint hitting the floor. So I can do some seriously intensive painting. But we still got to eat. And yesterday I talked to you about I showed you how to cook a leg of lamb. And part of this is I'm capturing this for the new YouTube channel I'm launching called Harvest Cooking. Because I realized that we talk about growing food and all the food, and then what do you do with the food? And what seems pretty simple to me from a going in standpoint of how to cook with the food is what I've learned to do over the last 15 years. And so if you're facing your first harvest, you don't have that, right? So so I'm just going to live stream this because I don't have a lot of storage on my phone. I can grab the video from YouTube, edit it for the other channel. We'll get this back to the angle it was at yesterday. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Happy Boxing Day. Yeah, I leave my Christmas up until Epiphany. So Christmas is up until Epiphany. There's a running joke around here. I'll be right back. I'll show you the running joke. This is the running joke in the holler. You can get these at the Dollar Tree for $1.25. They're plastic little bells. So I bought 6 of them and used them. I was going to put them on Taj Mahal on the posts. And didn't get around to it. So I still have Halloween decorations out there. And it got super cold for Christmas. And then I ended up putting these with all the presents. So a whole bunch of people in the holler was like, oh, and here's your $1.25 plastic bell that comes with your Christmas present. Okay, so now we're going to do the cooking. So this is the second part of dealing with a leg of lamb. We cooked the leg of lamb yesterday. This is what's left of the leg of lamb. There's still some meat on there I could cut off. In fact, I'm going to cut the meat off and put it aside for later to add to the stew. What I'm doing with the leg is going from leg of lamb to leg of lamb stew. And so for this, I have, sharp knife. Don't want to cut myself. I just sort of shave it down like that to get some of the extra pieces off. And notice that I'm cutting away from myself. Yeah, it warmed up today. We're super stoked about that here too. There's some gristle in here. Woo! See, if you drop something and you're playing with a knife, just let it fall. That's something my chef friend told me once, and then we butchered a pig and I immediately cut myself with a knife. He tried not to pass out. And it was after spending all day butchering pigs, you get really tired. It was a big pig. It's my first time butchering. And I was cleaning the knives and trying to be careful, and I slipped and grabbed the knife, and sure enough, it cuts you if you grab it by the blade. Okay, so there's not much meat left, but this is all chunks of meat. I'm putting them aside. I'll put them in a little bowl. Okay, so put it in a bowl for later, because I'm going to add it back to the stew, but what I do first is cook low and slow on this. Now, here's where we're at in the holler. Anytime I can cook something in the crock pot because I have the wood stove going, I am going to put it in my coated Dutch oven, which this is what I mean. It's got that porcelain coating for no stick. I'm going to put it in that on top of the stove. Look, that bends, fits in there. And here's the spoiler alert. There are 2 legs of lamb. Because I cooked one earlier, and this is what's left of the other leg of lamb. So I'm going to do the same thing. So this is typical. This is 1/2 of one leg. It doesn't, this is the knee joint, and it didn't continue around. So this one was just sort of the upper thigh area, or what we would call a ham on the pig. This one has a lot of meat left. And the story here is I brought this one out. It was a 3-pound leg, which isn't huge, but not a bad size, to defrost. And I thought it would take 3 days to defrost in my fridge, and it took 1 day to defrost in my fridge. So I cooked it because I didn't want it just sitting around the fridge, and I needed to cook something. So anyway, so that's all the meat. I'm going to pour it into this Tupperware for the, it's not a Tupperware, but you know, storage container. Tupperware's become, it's a brand, but it's just a word. And I'm going to rinse my hands, grab the washcloth, because you saw what BS I did there. I got that stuff all up. So that's going to go in the fridge while the stew cooks. In the last like little bit of the stew, I will pull this back out and cut it into cubes and throw it in the stew at the very end for like 2 minutes, because the stew will be hot and then that'll heat this up. But the reason I'm doing this is I don't want this meat cooking in the stew all day today slowly. What I'm going to be doing is cooking these bones slowly all day to get all the goodness out of them. And the herb crusting came off the outside. That's fine. That's just rosemary and garlic you saw yesterday. So from here, the most important thing about a stew for me is that it have a whole onion in it while it's making the broth. So this time, yesterday we cut it into stripes, right? Today I'm going to cut it into hunks. That's an official word, hunks. I'm not really worried about dicing this finely. What happens in a slow cooked soup is that it will just end up kind of mellowing with all the flavors in there. In essence, what I'm doing is making a bone broth with lamb, right? So here I just cut the onion in half and then slice it up into hunks that would fit on a spoon. I do it without cutting my fingers, right? And then I'm supposed to be facing the camera while I do this. This is awkward. I need to get my kitchen studio hooked back up where I can face you. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to move the Dutch oven over here. There's some flotsam and jetsam. And throw that in. Now, if I had celery, I would add celery. I think I might have celery. Let me go look. I had to take all the celery out of my aquaponics system because it got down to 0. Well, I didn't have to, but if I didn't, it was going to freeze and die, so I just harvested it. And I think it's in here, but I may have gotten rid of it. I may have used it already. Nope, no celery. So I would put celery in, but we know when you're cooking with what you have, what do you do when you don't have something? If it's not super important to the recipe, nah. So no celery. Really the most important part for me is that it have onion. Then I'm going to add some water to this so that it can simmer on my stove for the afternoon while I rip out my bathroom. If I was doing this in a crock pot, I would actually put this on high for about an hour while it heats up and then do it on low. So what I'm just putting in enough water to kind of just not even cover it all the way. It's about halfway and it'll melt down in there. So that's step 1 of the stew. And I'm just going to put this onto the side. It'll go on my wood stove. Now, while I'm here, I might as well prepare the rest of the stew, right? So then we got the carrots, and I like to peel store carrots. These are store carrots, not ones I grew. So I peel them, and I'm not putting them in the stew until later in the day because, I mean, you could if you wanted, like if you just needed to go to work and turn your crock pot on, I would just turn the crock pot on low, go to work. I like to cut big hunks of carrots for stews like this. I kind of like the mouthfeel of that. So rather than little bites, I do big bites. And this one's already peeled because I peeled it yesterday. But I like, you know, if you were going to work and put this in the crock pot, I would put the whole thing in there on low. And then I would definitely just throw the root vegetables in with it. And they will be squishier. They will cook longer, therefore they will be squishier. If you wait until the last, in a crock pot, 3 hours, on the wood stove, probably 2 hours to put them in, they just end up a little bit more al dente. It's not quite al dente. I like that mouthfeel better, And since I am working from home, I can just prepare this for the day, right? So you get up in the morning, you prepare this. So how long are we into this live stream now? 10 minutes. And it's taken 10 minutes in part because I'm talking to y'all. That's longer than it usually takes. I can prepare this, have it set aside, and then at the time of day, which would for me be about 4 o'clock, 3 to 4 o'clock, I have a little reminder set on my phone, and it says carrots, and usually I'm on like a customer call at that point. And then I just run out to the fridge and I grab the carrots and whatever other root vegetables I feel like putting in, and I put them in. Now, if you're trying to remain keto on this, don't put a bunch of carrots in. Put 1 or 2 carrots in. Or don't put any carrots in. Other things you can put in with the stew is meat. People don't realize that. Like when you make a stew and it's a keto stew, you just put meat in. You don't have to substitute anything. You can add cauliflower and other like broccoli type things to it, but you don't have to. It can just be meat. You can put a little bit of tomato. That'll up the carb count, but it makes the broth delicious. I'll probably throw some frozen tomatoes in with the water that I need to get rid of that are coming out of my freezers that I had to consolidate. I'll probably do that because I like that. It adds a richness to the broth. They just disintegrate to nothing. But the cool thing about stew is as long as you don't use too much water to bone marrow ratio and you add the onion, then it's usually delicious. The other secret I like to do is, you know, when it comes to transforming it from the bone broth I'll be making on the stove first to actual stew, is I like to fill it with ingredients, whether that be meat ingredients or other vegetables. You know, I might put some beet greens in this just for nutritional purposes. I have some in the freezer. These are turnips, and I'm not peeling them. And the reason I'm not peeling them is I know where they were grown and how they were grown. And there is nutrient in the peels and vitamins in the peels of things. And since I know that this was not exposed to a bunch of synthetic fertilizer or pesticides, it was just grown in the soil the way you should grow food, I don't worry about the peels having a bunch of residual black. Those also go to the side. Now, this is not, if you are not keto, I would do twice that many vegetables. I balance, so I'm a sort of a keto eater, but on a stew, I like to have some root vegetables in it. So I go light on the root vegetables. This is going to make probably 1, 2, 3, 4. It's probably going to make about 8 servings of stew. And so, you know, 1/8 of that is what I get in mind. Plus, if I feel like I don't want as many, I pick around them. I cut them big enough to pick around them. So putting those to the side, and then we add the spices. We've got the bay leaf here. So if you don't have a bay leaf, whatever. Put a bay leaf in to the pot. I'll put my knife carefully to the side. This is going to the pig. Then somebody sent me a bunch of dried hot peppers. So I like to have hot peppers in the winter in my stews. These are pretty hot, so I only put a couple of those in. If you don't like peppers, don't put the peppers in. There's already a fairly heavy rosemary flavor from this from yesterday, so that goes in. I'm not going to add many more herbs. I'm going to add a little bit of cumin. Yep, it's cumin from the store. That's about a teaspoon. I'll sprinkle it in there. Then I just throw the lid on this, put it on the wood stove, and then let's see, let's move this up now. I put it on the wood stove and I'll let it go. I'm going to put I'm in my construction clothes today. I'm going to go into that bathroom, rip stuff out of it, get it prepped for painting, maybe start painting. And at about 2 to 3 o'clock, but probably 3 to 4 o'clock, I'm going to add this bowl of vegetables in. When I do that, I'll take a taste and ask myself, self, how salty is this? And self is going to say, not salty enough, except for sometimes it is salty enough because there is already salt in the meat and the bones from being roasted. So usually I would add salt right now to a teaspoon or two to this. Not doing that right now because this is coming from something I roasted and served that had already been salted, and some of that soaked into the meat and the bone. I'm going to let it become broth, taste the broth, and then if it doesn't have enough salt, I'll add salt. And here's the key to good broth. Add salt to taste. Yeah. So it seems like a lot of salt sometimes when you make bone broth that you have to add, but until it's salty enough to be broth, it is what it is. So I'll add salt and pepper to taste at the end. I'll throw these vegetables in, and then that's what's for dinner tonight. So we're 15 minutes in, and dinner's going to be already cooking. All I got to do from here, it'll take me 3 minutes to clean up like the scraps and everything. Good morning, A-Rape here. It'll take me 3 minutes to clean up the scraps, and then I'm good to go for the day. I've got a one-pot meal coming out tonight. If I wanted to do a salad as a side dish or whatever, I would. Right now, what we have is like all the Christmas leftovers. So if somebody wants something besides the stew, which is also Christmas leftovers, they can just go get it themselves. There aren't that many people here, so they know how to go in the fridge and heat stuff up. Anyway, Merry Christmas, everybody. As I said, I'm capturing this because we're going to edit these down into some new videos that are coming out next year, but you get to see them in advance. Merry Christmas.